Hey everyone, this is the final portion of the faculty presentation on disability support. We're going to focus on universal design for learning in higher education. Just do a brief overview as an introduction. So what is universal design for learning, or UDL? So UDL, the goal is to really change the design of the environment rather than to change the learner. UDL, it's a framework, it's sort of guidelines. It's not kind of hard and fast rules. They're very flexible. And so how can UDL benefit all students, not just those with disabilities? So when environments are intentionally designed to reduce barriers, all learners can engage in rigorous, meaningful learning. So a great example is handicap ramps. So when there's no handicap ramps, someone who utilizes a wheelchair might need assistance to get in and out of the building. Versus when the ramps are there, that barrier is reduced, that barrier is essentially eliminated. They now don't need that assistance. It's kind of the same concept for UDL, is reducing those barriers so that there's less accommodation, less need for assistance. It's kind of already built in, essentially. It's built-in accommodations is a great way to think of it. So representation and perception are kind of some really key areas. Everybody differs in the way that they perceive and comprehend information. Someone with a sensory disability, with learning disabilities, language or cultural differences, they all might approach content in different ways. Others might simply just grasp information more quickly or efficiently through visual or auditory means rather than printed text. So some of us are visual learners, some of us are more tactile, some of us are more auditory, and that kind of all comes into play with universal design. And learning occurs best when multiple representations are used. This is because it allows students to make connections within as well as between concepts. There's really no one way of representation that's going to be optimal for all learners. This is why providing multiple different options for representation is so important. So, perception. Interacting with flexible content that doesn't depend on a single sense. So, showing a PowerPoint and just simply clicking through the slides but not saying anything. That would be an example of something that relies on a single sense site. If someone who is blind or otherwise visually impaired now can't access that information. So what are ways that we can make that more accessible? Speaking along with the PowerPoint, right? That's pretty simple. Providing captions could be really important. But it's really all about kind of customizing the display of information and allowing for it to be customized. When you're showing movies, making sure that there are captions available and that you're using them, that students don't have to ask for the captions to be put on. Providing visual equivalents for sound effects or alerts. Providing written transcripts for videos can be really helpful for certain students. And then offering alternatives for visual information. So providing descriptions for images or graphics. Providing physical objects or spatial models could be really a cool way to kind of incorporate the concept of UDL. And then providing auditory cues for key concepts and transitions and visual information can also be really important. So action and expression is kind of what comes after perception. Learners differ in ways that they can navigate a learning environment. Someone with a mobility impairment may not be able to move around the room to move to different stations or in group work. So that's kind of something important to keep in mind. Someone with a language barrier might approach learning a task very differently than someone who's a native speaker. And some students are better able to express themselves in writing but not in speech, or vice versa. I know when I was in school, I could write essay after essay after essay, but get me up in front of the class and I couldn't tell you my name. And that's just an example of a learning style where I could not kind of articulate what I knew verbally, but asked me to write it down, and I was good to go. And recognizing that this action and expression kind of requires a lot of strategy, practice, and organization, all areas that learners can differ. So organization is a huge piece. Not all of our students are as organized as we would like, and so kind of building in supports for them to help develop those skills can be really important. So here's a quick video that I'm going to show about universal design, and let's see if I can get it to play. It played in the actual PowerPoint. Let me do it this way. I think we can play back. I'm not sure why this won't play, so we'll skip this for now and we will come back to it at the end, or I will post a link to it on the website as well, so I apologize about that. This was just a really great example of a video with a lot of visual cues, captions, and just talked about kind of the basic concepts of universal design. So this was part of the presentation where I really had like an interactive piece with faculty asking what are some examples of implementing universal design in the classroom? Can you think of any that you could implement this semester or maybe even next class? Some areas to consider are presenting materials and lecturing, reading materials, exams and assignments, and presentations. Since this recording is not interactive, we'll move along to the next slide, but I would encourage you to kind of think through those questions. So what are some examples of implementing universal design in the classroom? When you're showing videos, make sure the caption is on. That's a really simple way to make sure that more students can access the material. I know personally, I have a hard time taking in information that's simply auditory. I often need some sort of visual or written information to go along with it. So I know that captions really help me, but captions can also help students who are hard of hearing and make sure that they have access to the information. When you're asking students to demonstrate knowledge, consider offering multiple options, whether that's an oral presentation, it could be in person, could be video recorded, a written paper, an exam, maybe it's a comic strip or a poem or a skit. Of course, these aren't going to work for every class, but it's definitely something to consider in when you're asking students to demonstrate what they know. When you're using printed materials or PowerPoints, consider how the material is formatted. Everything should be a size 12 font or larger. A sans serif font, so something like Arial. A serif font is a font that has kind of little curly cues at the bottom of the letters, and while we can't necessarily see it with our eyes, it is more difficult for our brains to read, and this is especially true for students with dyslexia or other processing kind of deficits. Utilizing dark fonts on a light background also works really well for students with visual impairments, but also for clarity for all students. I know sometimes we make PowerPoints, we want to make them flashy and pretty, but oftentimes we can kind of make them almost too pretty, too flashy, and they can be really difficult to read. So again, avoid using those bright colors. When you're scanning books or articles for students to use, ensure that the copies are clear and easy to read, that they don't have shadows or gray areas. This is really, really important, not only because nobody likes reading a grainy PDF, but because students who utilize screen reader technology, if a PDF is not clear, it's very difficult to then convert that into a format that can be accessible via a screen reader. So that's a really, really important piece to ensure access. Consider posting your syllabus, your course materials, reading materials, all of that prior to the start of the semester so that students can prepare ahead of time. This is great for students who struggle with executive functioning and are really just unorganized and need to plan ahead. This can be great for students with processing disorders who need more time to process the information. And then for students who might need alternate formats of materials, whether that's audio, whether it's enlarged font, all of those things take time. And the earlier they have the materials, the sooner we can get started on the process and make sure that they have everything on time and ready for the start of the semester. So really what the key ideas here that I want everyone to take away are diversity in modes of instruction and multiple means of demonstrating learning. Those are really the key concepts of universal design. Just a few more examples of implementing universal design in the classroom before we wrap up. Posting lesson goals. So we all have kind of the syllabus at the start of class, and there's usually kind of a list of expectations or goals for the course. But thinking about putting goals for each individual class meeting can be a really great way to help students guide their notes and really understand what they should be getting out of each class. Assignment options is something that we talked about, going back to essays or exams or comic strips or verbal presentations, things like that. Flexible workspaces. So when students are being asked to work in groups or work individually, allowing students kind of the flexibility to say, okay, we're working individually, we're supposed to be focused. Maybe you have a student in your class who has a hard time staying focused, but if they put headphones in, they're able to then focus on the material. Kind of allowing for that flexibility can be really, really helpful. Providing students with regular feedback is critical. I remember as a student struggling at times because I would hand in an assignment and I wouldn't get feedback on it until after I had already passed in a second assignment, and now it's the third assignment, and I don't really know if what I'm doing is what the professor is asking for. So that regular feedback piece can be really, really important. And then digital and audio text. So universal design recognizes that if students can't access information, they cannot learn it. So in a universal design classroom, materials are accessible for all types of learners. So audio text, we have this software called Read and Write Gold. It's a extension for Google Chrome, and it allows students to highlight a selection of text and have it read aloud to them. It also allows students to speak and have their speech converted into text. It has a built-in dictionary. It can create vocab lists, just a wide range of kind of supports for students. Another kind of key piece is the Google Docs voice typing feature. Again, allows students to speak and have their words converted into text. Great tools for students who struggle with typing, who struggle with expressing themselves in writing but are really good speakers. They can speak their whole paper and get it out on paper, and then all they have to do is format it. It's a really, really great tool. So if you're interested in universal design for learning and its implementation at Cambridge College, there is a UDL pilot group. It's 12 points for participation. You'll get to meet with a professional facilitator with UDL course design experience, and you should contact Brooks for additional information on that. Here's some references where I got some of the stats and myths and things of that nature towards the beginning of the presentation. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I would welcome the opportunity to speak with any of you. I think it's really important to have faculty involvement. Thanks so much and have a great day.